Welcome back, listeners, to Matt Goes to the Movies. It's a little bit later than usual, but it is time for another episode of Loki. Now, normally, Loki would be myself, Rob, and Harrison from the Basement Binge, but unfortunately, these next two episodes will be minus Harrison. So for episodes 3 and 4, you're just going to get Rob and I, but we are super excited to talk about this and eventually get Harrison back. But Rob, welcome back.
Thanks. It's kind of a different episode this week, both actually for this show and the one that we're talking about, Loki here. And it's hard to know what to think about what we saw.
Yeah, I definitely think there is some interesting conversations that are going to be had here because I've had the opportunity, because we're recording this a little bit later than what we normally would for Loki. I've had a chance to watch it again and really, take a deep dive into my thoughts about it. So, well, at first it was a little disappointing that we weren't able to get together as soon as we normally do. I actually like it for this episode because, again, it gave me time to really gather my thoughts about how I feel.
Did the second watch increase, decrease, or remain the same in terms of your feeling about this episode? Like, if you had to rate it, how many, so many reels, without saying the number of reels, out of 5 for the first one, did it change on the second watch?
It changed, but it's very, very minute. It is not a glaring like, wow, I can't believe I thought this at first and now I have this kind of feeling. There's some minor changes, but my overall opinion remains largely unchanged.
Interesting.
So
I did 2 watches on this, like I typically do with most things. I kind of had to force myself to do the second one. I wasn't really into this week. It's we'll definitely get into it, but I kind of had to really be like, okay, let's get this done now. Let's go do watch number 2.
Yeah, and I think without getting into too much, I think it's time to hit the teaser trailer portion of this segment where we're gonna talk about this spoiler free, give like a quick little 2-minute overview of what we felt of this episode. So before we do that, though, for listeners of the show, if you've listened to some of the new solo episodes such as The Dark Knight, Spiral, Equilibrium, there's been a little bit of a format change for the show. And this Loki episode, though, will be the first episode that uses that new format if you're strictly listening to Loki or you haven't caught up on some of the newer episodes yet. So it used to be called the 2-minute warning. It has switched to the teaser trailer segment. It's more in line with the name of the show, Matt Goes to the Movies. So, Rob, I'll let you go first. I know we kind of talked about it a little, but what is your brief overview of this episode?
So this episode is called Lamentis, and I lament watching this episode. We ended last week on such a great, just your mind starts going in a million directions. Loki drops off all of these time bombs all across time, space, and reality. And you just you ran through last week, where these went and some of the places like Vormir, what does that mean? Holy cow, that's major. And I know we normally this would be the point where Harrison would remind us not to get too far ahead of ourselves. But it's hard not to start theorizing when you see those time branches coming off like that, what that's going to mean and how that's going to impact things. And does that mean Scarlet Witch is coming back? I'm already doing it. We didn't get any follow-up on that this week at all. And that was what I was really most excited about. This episode, if you were to do this show as a film, this episode wouldn't exist. This episode felt like filler to me, where Falcon and the Winter Soldier felt like a 6-hour movie just broken into 6 individual parts. And it really played. There wasn't a lot that I think you would cut from that. This definitely, and I know you've got a really great take on this. This to me just felt like a very filler episode. I don't know how much we get a little bit of character development for Loki, the female version of Loki, who we find out a different name for. And we find out something that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about is the big takeaway from this episode of both versions of the character. But there's really not a lot that actually happens here. There's kind of even some rare technical misses from Disney. And I'm kind of talking when they're just walking around on the planet, there's some really not good looking green screen effect. Like it doesn't look good. And the audio mix was really bad in certain places. Like when the meteorites are falling to Earth, like I really struggled to understand the dialogue over the Foley effects. Like there was just a variety of different points like that it just made me go, what the heck is going on here? I mean, I think it was last week or the week before. We spent time praising Disney for paying attention to the little things and the small details and things like that. All the character moments in Mission Control that worked so well. For this week, to me, and I don't know if you picked up on the same things I did, but kind of a miss there. Did you see any of that too?
Yeah, this is a weird episode where, Rob, you and I talked about it. I think it was the other day or the day before, prior to recording, when we were just, talking on the phone. This is the first episode from Disney Plus. You say filler, and I agree. And how I said it to you was this: I'm a big fan of the shows like, well, in their previous seasons, but like Flash and Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow and these shows that have been on the CW. But one of the problems with those shows is they order, 20 episode seasons where it's filler. And this is the first Disney Plus episode where it felt like a CW show to me. There were some really bad effects. There was some odd audio issues with this episode. And it just didn't feel like a Disney Plus show. And I want to get into it further when we talk more spoilers. But, you said there's not a lot of follow-up. And here's like one more analogy because this happened to me. About 4 days ago, I ordered out. I didn't feel like cooking. And I ordered from, I'll just name drop it, Longhorn Steakhouse. And I ordered a steak, and I got grilled shrimp and broccoli with it. And my order comes to the thing. I don't check it. They curbside. I get home, and inside my tray is just my steak. Now, don't get me wrong. The steak was good, but I ordered the broccoli and the shrimp for a reason, and so the meal wasn't complete. And that is this episode for me. This episode is just not complete. But without getting into like heavy spoilers, I'll say that this is definitely a miss, and one of hopefully not things to come for Disney Plus shows, because I can see maybe a pattern with what we're getting. So I will leave it at that for the teaser trailer portion of my part.
Because you and I think, both disliked, or I think maybe I disliked stronger, episode 3 of WandaVision, where it was like, okay, come on, get on with it. And now here we are, episode 3 of Loki, and I'm thinking about to trash this thing.
Yeah, 100%. So now we'll move on here. So for any reason, if you haven't seen episode 3 of Loki and you clicked on this episode but you don't want to be spoiled, here's your chance. Pause this episode, watch it, come back. Next segment Rob and I are going to be doing is called From Seat to Screen, and this is going to be an overview of what works with this episode and what doesn't work with this episode. Hopefully we don't just blast this thing, but I feel like there might not be a lot to go with on what works. But one thing that I'd like to say, Rob, to start with what works is, and I think this is what you meant, we get the reveal that Loki is bisexual. And I feel like this is actually probably one of the very few instances where it felt natural. there's always been, in when Beauty and the Beast, the live action version came out, there was, a huge article about how it has an openly gay character. And then when Cruella came out, there was also an article. And when you watch those movies, at least in my mind, it didn't feel like they were actually, honoring this group or doing anything that felt natural. And there were reviews about these movies and how it didn't feel natural. I felt like this was so subtly done that it worked. And I felt like this was one of the rare times where it didn't feel like they were trying to push a message and it was just a nice scene and they let it have its moment.
I think there's going to be, again, this is absolutely going to be the biggest talking point about this episode. Maybe one of the bigger talking points about the MCU for a good portion, going forward, at least until we hit Black Widow. And then as we've been talking, I think Disney thinks they've got a hit on their hands, which is why they've pushed for it to have a theatrical release when you can actually get butts in seats again. And once that hits, we're going to completely forget about a lot of other stuff. I think that representation in comics matters, and I think of all entertainment media, comics probably, at least right now, is doing the most of pretty much anything to make anyone who's out there feel like they've got a character, a hero, somebody that feels like them. It could be them. And that's kind of the beauty of comics and graphic novels. That's sort of the joy is some of it is escapism, but that person could be you. You could have been the one to run out in the middle of the test field to save Rick Jones, and now you get hit with the gamma radiation. Now you're the Hulk. You could have been the one that got bit by the radioactive spider, and now you're Spider-Man. These are regular people that have things happen to them. You could just be a really willful person. All of a sudden a Green Lantern ring comes and finds you and chooses you as the next guardian of sector whatever. So having characters that represent the fan base is important. We've seen that. We've seen how important a film like Black Panther was. And to have Loki be a member of that community, he's a fun character. He really always has been. He's been that character has been a villain, but he's such a charismatic villain. And Hiddleston's so good at what he does with it that of course there was going to be demand for a Loki show, and that they've chosen to reveal this aspect of his character at this point in the way that they did it. There's going to be people who aren't satisfied with it. People who like that there's representation, and people who don't like that there's new representation, I think, will not be happy with how it was done. But I also think there will be plenty of other people that think it was done very well and very in character. Loki's never had any romantic inclinations at any point of his character in the MCU. We've never seen him show a preference for even having relationships at all. Having this quiet moment between these two characters where, yes, they're different versions of each other, but there's probably some core things they share. It was compelling to me that they already knew that about each other, that was something that they were going to share, that they were just whichever way the wind blew that day was how they were going to fly. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a really, thought out response to that. So, but I think you're also right. I think there's going to be some people, no matter what, they, don't want the representation. But as far as my opinion goes, I think they did it in a manner that worked. Because, like you said,
there's definitely people that don't want it, but there's also people who aren't going to be happy because he didn't full on mouth kiss another man. There's going to be people who aren't happy about how little was done or how much was done.
Yeah, I think it's there. That's a great point. There's always going to be that, that side to it. So, Rob, I'll let you go next. Whether you want to go with a topic that worked or whether you want to go with something that doesn't. But What actually, I guess I'll just ask pointedly, what other scene worked for you in this movie, or what other plot point worked?
I kind of like the different way we intro this episode. It's different theme music and was kind of fun the way that they used more of an upbeat theme song to get us started here. This opening fight was kind of cool, but um, once again, I feel like I just can't not see this every time that it happens. But why exactly does the TVA use batons for everything? Like, there's not a gun in that whole facility. Like, nobody has a projectile based weapon, like, not even a crossbow, like, not even a baton attached to a crossbow. Like, at this point, it's becoming weird, and this was a complaint that I had throughout Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, all of a sudden the entire world forgot that there's guns out there. Like, every fight scene was mostly just hand to hand because that's kind of the power set of the characters that involved. And if all of a sudden somebody's got guns, then it's kind of tough to make the fight scene work. This fight scene, as good as it was, kind of suffers from that. And here's the thing: is I do like what they did with it, but it just feels weird to me that they don't. And I know that it's hard to make gunfights look cool and compelling. Like, it's hard, especially with a show like this. And outside, and I think you mentioned, did you do a review on Equilibrium recently?
Yes, I did.
Oh my goodness. I'm just going to go ahead and plug that for a second. I don't think you've released it because I haven't heard it, but Equilibrium is the way that you can always talk about, that shows the coolest gunfights that have ever happened. You've talked about it before. I've definitely recommended it. Harrison, I know you're listening right now. Go see Equilibrium. I can't recommend this film highly enough. And it was just really funny that we're talking about gunfights that look cool, and you've got that coming up. But it seems really strange to me, and I can't help but like notice it every time.
No, I think you're 100% right. And Equilibrium actually is on Matt Goes to the Movies, and I just go on like not a boy, like just like a fanboy rant about how well the gunfighting, and it sounds funny just saying it for anybody who hasn't seen the movie. Like, gunfighting, like what's gunfighting? Like, you shoot the gun at somebody. Not in this movie.
Go see it. Yeah, find it on
yeah.
DVD, rent it, whatever you got to do, find it. You will thank us.
But Rob, you're 100% right. It's always just odd, and it's becoming more and more like relevant in these shows where certain things just don't make sense because, in the first episode it's, oh, we have guns, and then, oh, never mind, like everything's it's going to be handled in fisticuffs, and we're going to do this mano-y-mano and we'll duke it out. And it's like, wait, why? Like, all of a sudden you want to be noble about it when 2 seconds, it's like the stormtroopers in Star Wars. They're chasing everybody through the Death Star, and they're shooting at them on kill mode, and then as soon as they're right in front of them, they're like, all right, hands up, you're under arrest. And it's like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
like, what? You were just shooting at them to kill them, and now that they're point blank in front of you, you're like, oh, let's take them hostage. And
Yep.
that's what a lot of this feels like. And you're right, you can't help but stop, like, not be able to ignore it as it continues to go on. That was one thing that I totally agree with. Also, too, there were some instances in the fight where it definitely did not seem like, at least to me, the best choreography. There's some, I will say, in the scope of what we've seen on Disney Plus, there were some rare misses here, like we talked about earlier, in terms of editing and audio. There's some real misses where this almost felt like they forgot they had a budget, or they ran out of budget for this episode.
Yeah, I like some of the fight that on the train. There's parts that are good, but it's, and just speaking to fights, and speaking specifically to choreography. One of the things I've talked about is how much I love the layout and the creativity put into almost everything we've seen in the MCU when it comes to the fights. Like, Ant-Man's kind of my go-to for that. Like, wow, they really nail how a character with that skill set would actually fight, and it looks amazing, and it's so well done. This is kind of the first time we've seen Loki, through this series. I guess we've really seen him have to, really actually get into it. He's not really been in that before. He's commanded armies, he's turned people, he's murdered people, but he's not really been in these kind of situations throughout the MCU. And I don't feel like they know what to do with him in some of these scenes. Like, he's got his daggers and he kind of makes that like a signature weapon, but doesn't really seem like he's really proficient with it, the way that they use him. And then he's got magic and sometimes he uses it, but mostly he doesn't. Like, mostly like his fighting style is kind of like half drunk barroom brawl. Like, there doesn't really seem to be any skill set or technique to most of what he's doing. You know, whereas Sylvie does seem like she's a little bit more practiced in these ways. I don't know. It's kind of weird if you go back and rewatch those scenes. There's just something off about some of the fights. I enjoyed some of the aspects of it, but other parts of it just kind of leave your head scratching.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag because there's some stuff here and there that is like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. But then I think you summed it up perfectly. It seems like at points they don't know what to do with Loki. And I feel like this is, one of the things that hampers some of the solo movies is there always seems to be a need to water down the heroes based on what's going on, because you can have, an individual movie where Thor can, defeat the Dark Elves and he's fine, but then he needs help defeating, enemies in Infinity War and things like that. So it kind of felt like that here with Loki is, oh, well, we don't want to show him too powerful, so we got to nerf him a little bit. But in reality, based on some of the things that they were talking about this, it seems like Loki should have just been able to, whether like just be with magic, take care of whatever problems were going on, because he can project images of himself. He can do all these things, but it's just like, I think maybe he forgot that he has those powers in certain scenes.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, because he uses his magic in that train fight like once, maybe twice, and you're almost kind of thinking like, why didn't you do that before? It's very much like that scene in Infinity War where Okoye looks around after Scarlet Witch comes down and just starts wrecking people, and she goes, why was she up there the whole time? Like, it's very reminiscent of that, and it's played for a laugh in the movie, but here it's kind of like it just stands out to me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I want to go next. Is we talked about, you mentioned it, WandaVision episode 3. Falcon and the Winter Soldier didn't have it as bad, but I'm sensing through 3 shows a pattern, and you would think that with shows like this that do not have that many episodes. I mean, when you think about it, WandaVision was, Rob, I should remember this, so I can't believe
9?
that I can't, 8 or 9 episodes.
I think it was 9. Yeah, I think it was 9.
Then you had Falcon and the Winter Soldier that was only 6. And you have this that is going to be 6 episodes. You wouldn't think there would have to be pacing issues with these shows. And the fact that we've kind of seen it through 3 shows gives me pause with some concern for future shows coming up, because if they're still going to go with the same, well, we're going to give you a little bit, but we can't reveal anything really on Disney Plus. Like, it has to be in the movies. I worry about some of these future these future shows based on what I'm seeing here with pacing issues, because that is one thing that doesn't, like, 100% why this episode doesn't hit for me is it looks like they deliberately made this episode so that they do not have to give you anything based off of the last episode. And again, I don't need everything just immediately, but this episode really felt sort of like a slap in the face, like they created it just so they didn't have to give you information. Because I mean, realistically, in the grand scheme of things, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, or and if you don't feel like this, you only get one major plot point reveal in this episode, and that's that. And it's interesting, but the TVA are variants, which Loki says, I thought they were created by the TVA. She says, no, that's ridiculous. They're variants like us, which is interesting. But that's literally like the only thing you get out of this episode to really truly follow up on what we got the week prior.
It's if you're going to watch this show from start to finish without knowing what comes in future weeks, it's very likely to me that you could just skip this and read the summary on Wikipedia or listen to your favorite internet podcast that does a weekly show on it. You could do that too. I recommend that. Not only do I recommend that, I recommend sharing it with your friends. If you've not already done so, tell a friend. But I digress. Yeah, like there's really not a lot that happens in this week where I found myself writing down very few notes that I really felt were like, oh yeah, I gotta, those are things that I really need to make sure that I remember. I didn't really write down a lot because they're really, the big reveal was that they are variants. That's kind of interesting. Like, okay, that makes sense. It gives them something to do. And I guess if you're Loki, you have kind of a future that ensures your survival so that you don't get pruned. There's hope that you could continue on in some way. If you stay with the TVA, it may not be the life you want, but it's at least life. That's really the biggest thing that I take away, because I think I've seen a lot of talk online about the cliffhanger at the end. I didn't feel like it was a cliffhanger at all. To me, it just didn't mean anything. Like, it meant nothing to me. I felt nothing when this was over.
100% agree. This episode ends, and I didn't even, normally when these episodes end, I have some sort of feeling about the next one, whether it be good or bad. Like WandaVision episode 3, I was like, okay, I get it. Something needs to happen in 4, and then it just like, boom, hit you right in the face with it in episode 4, and it's like, okay, you wanted something, here's something. I didn't feel, like you said, anything really almost either way, and that to me is worse than saying something bad or saying something good. The fact that this episode ended and I really just kind of went, okay, and like I got up and just like went about my day. Like, I didn't stop to think about it. I didn't ponder. I just went about my day, and to be honest, I didn't think about it until I rewatched it, and even the second time was still okay. Like,
Not only that,
like my mind was blank.
not only did you just go about your day, we didn't even send each other a vague text like chomping at the bit to be able to talk about it. It's just like, okay, yeah, that happened. That was a thing. It's almost like going on a Target run. Like, okay, yeah. I picked up what I needed. I came home. I put the stuff away. The Swiffer refills are under the sink again now. Like, okay, like just whatever. I watched the show. I checked it off my list. It's done for the week.
That is the oddest in segment mention ever, because I'm not gonna lie, I made a Target run today and got Swiffer and got refills. That is so bizarre that you said that. They are literally sitting in my closet with my cleaning stuff. So
having recently done the thing, can you say that watching this episode was very similar to the experience of completing that task?
Oh, 100%. Like, I'm like grinning ear to ear right now. Like, just thinking about that. So, yeah, there's no text between us. There was no thought on my end. It was just, okay, I guess we'll go to episode 4. I haven't even pondered what episode 4 could be, what I want it to be. And again, that's a little nerve-wracking to me given the fact of how much we love these shows, we've loved this universe, and I'm sure maybe this is probably just, a fleeting thing and it'll come back. It's just odd because I have not experienced it so far with this universe.
Well, and it's not even necessarily that the episode is truly bad. Like this isn't Batman v Superman bad. It's just it's not relevant. Like it's not good. Like it's not it I'm trying to understand its purpose of existing. Like that's I guess that's the worst thing you can say about it's not necessarily that the dialogue is really bad. It's not that the performances are bad. It's just kind of like I'm trying to understand when they sat down and mapped out this series and they looked at episode 3 and they mapped out what they were trying to do. Like that's kind of what you ended up on, really? Like you didn't have anything else you wanted to do. This is the best you could come up with. Getting back to something you were kind of talking about with what they're doing on Disney Plus and holding the big stuff for the films. What's the biggest MCU star, biggest named character, not necessarily biggest actor, but the biggest named character they've had on Disney Plus so far through 3 shows? I mean, is it Loki? I mean, is he the biggest, MCU name to be on a series? I mean, we haven't gotten Doctor Strange. We thought we might in WandaVision. He didn't show up. We thought we might get Steve Rogers in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We didn't. There's a chance you could not just have like a flashback to the Thor films in this. There's a chance we might actually get Odin or Thor in this series, but it's probably not going to happen. I think it'll be interesting at some point if fans start saying like, yeah, these shows are good. And look, they've been good. They've been very good. They've been very entertaining. They're setting the stage for what's to come. But do you need a major MCU star, one of the prime Avengers? Do you need one of them to show up to keep these things really relevant? Do you need that to make it still feel important as opposed to a side story that sets up the main plot?
Yeah, I think, again, eventually I do think here and there you do need some of those things for these shows to stay fresh and to stay relevant so that some of them don't feel just like filler. Because again, that is, and I didn't think it would be maybe like you or me, but for the casual fan that doesn't, follow the MCU as much as we do, and it's like, okay, I'm going to see only the Avengers films or things like that. There's still things that happen in these shows that if we get a Captain America 4 movie and Sam's Captain America, I think, you can sit there and have people be confused with, well, when did he become Captain America? Or, well, I don't really care that he's Captain America because I didn't watch the show. So I think there's a real delicate balance that they have to try and maintain of, well, we don't want to give away the farm, but there's also got to be some type of animals on the farm. Like I don't go to the zoo to see, grass. Like I'll go to the zoo because I want to see animals. Maybe that reference doesn't hit for everybody, but that's just how I feel. You gotta have something.
I mean, I'm going to see the sea lions. I want to see the otters because they're always doing something nutty. Like that's kind of what I want to see. There's going to have to be something, I think. And one of the things that's been very successful on Disney Plus so far is taking some of these characters who were secondary, tertiary characters and giving them a moment to shine, giving them a moment for us to care about it. You think back to WandaVision. You've said it many times. You did not care about either of those characters coming into that show. Like it just couldn't have mattered. The relationship really didn't matter. There just wasn't a lot about them that made you even consider their existence. And now coming out of that show, like, wow, you really do. Like they're fully developed, fully fleshed out. The Falcon, Winter Soldier, they were interesting, but did we really know a lot about them in their appearances prior to their show in the MCU? No. Now I think we know about them a little bit more. Um, so it is developing some of these characters who haven't had the major shine, who aren't Iron Man, who aren't Captain America to start with, who aren't, the Hulk or Thor, and making us more interested in them. Will it have a lasting impact? I guess we'll have to see how the films play out.
Yeah, 100%. Rob, do you have anything else that you want to mention about, anything that does work with this episode that we might have missed?
So things that do work. Just real quick, Hiddleston being amazing and perfectly cast as Loki is really the only thing that saves this episode for me from being a total and complete dumpster fire. I just throw that out real quick because he is amazing, and I want to at least recognize that because he's still, every time just him as Loki is fantastic. The one thing that I think is maybe the real high point of this episode for me, the love is hate is kind of an interesting take on the subject. That they have this long philosophical conversation, and they actually come back to it a second time. And you compare that to Vision's take on love at the end of WandaVision, where he says, "What is grief if not love persevering?" It's a very different. It's a very different look at those same ideas. And then later, Loki decides that love is a dagger. Just really interesting if they decide to continue on with showing us, the version of love or the analogies to love that some of the other characters that inhabit this universe decide on. And I would personally, if you asked every single person, that's played a secondary or major role in the MCU, if you've asked every single one of those characters to define it, I almost kind of think that would be interesting. Like I'd kind of watch that, not if they're super long, but I think seeing each person's definition of it could be really interesting. But that comment was kind of an interesting. That scene was interesting to me, and I liked it.
Yeah, I did too. I like the fact that they came back to it because a lot of the times you can see where it hangs in the air. But I liked that they came back to it, and I also really liked Loki's answer because again, you talked about how Vision had his response, and I think Loki's explanation really fit with his character and
Oh yeah,
how he felt because again, like I do find myself forgetting that this is supposed to be 2012 Loki is the year.
yeah, yeah.
And he hasn't gone through, granted he saw them, but emotionally he hasn't gone through Ragnarok with his brother Thor. He didn't actually sit there when Odin died. He didn't have all these experiences that have kind of turned Loki to what he was at the beginning of Infinity War. But this is also the same Loki that at the end of Thor told Odin that I could have done it, Father, and he still wants approval and he still wants love. So I think his response was really good, and I do like the fact of Rob, like you said, his performance. Can we just again say, we've talked about it before, they have really just nailed casting. I don't know. Granted, they switched out Edward Norton for Mark Ruffalo and Terrence Howard for Don Cheadle. I think Don Cheadle, in that regard, I really like Terrence Howard as Rhodey. I wish we would have seen more of him. Obviously, if you've ever read any of the stories, however that happened or whatever you believe, why he wasn't. But they, for 98% of the casting, have just absolutely nailed who plays these characters. It's amazing to have that many people and literally, like in my eyes, only have really two misfires. I actually still liked Edward Norton as Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk. Do I like Mark Ruffalo better? Eh, I don't know, give or take. But to nail the characters as much as they have really is something.
Just off the top of your head, what's the worst casting in the MCU? Like, if you just had to say through all the movies, like, that person's really not great in that role, and it's a significant role. Like, could you even do it? Could you even come up with one? Because I just right off the top of my head, I got nothing.
Yeah, no, like to say like, oh my God, they're like downright terrible. I couldn't say that. If I had to say, again, like I talked about, who would I be like? Nah, I could take somebody else. It really would be Don Cheadle. I can take him, but I'm not like over the top. Oh, it's so cool that he's Rhodey.
So there's no Clooney as Batman moments for you.
There's definitely not Clooney as Batman. So I don't see anybody needing to apologize for the next 20 years that they took on a role. So which good on him though, for good on George Clooney for openly admitting like, yeah, sorry guys. Yep. Like
yeah, I find
that so funny that he's just like, yeah, of course I should apologize. Like he just openly admits how bad it was and how he should apologize, and how much damage he realizes they did to the franchise. So good on him though for being a good sport about that. So with that, Rob, anything else that doesn't work that was glaring at you that we didn't get to before we move on?
So there's two things that really didn't work for me that we haven't had a chance to cover. Maybe it was just me. I don't think it was just me. Was there intended to be sexual tension between Loki and Sylvie? Because it seemed to me like it was being played that way, or portrayed that way, or given to us that way, and it was kind of weird. It was kind of creepy, really. I don't know if everybody saw that way. Did you feel that at all, Matt, or was that just me?
I think there were some scenes in there where it was, again, and I think it has to do with there seemed to be, and they're both supposed to be tricksters, and they talk about, her enchanting him and things like that, which clever little nod to who this character is in the comics, or may even be in this show. So I don't know. I've seen a theory that this episode is actually fake, that none of this actually happened, that this is all an illusion. I've certainly read about that theory, but it seemed like a lot of tonal shifts for the characters at certain points, and that seemed to be one of them for me. So I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, so that to me, I just thought was creepy. It's like an alternate dimension version of yourself. Like, no, I would never kiss a different version of myself. Like, that's just weird to me. Like, it just, and the other thing that really stood out is throughout his tenure in the MCU, Loki has always been, even when his plans fail miserably, even when he's defeated, he's always got his cool. He always has his charming persona, and always has a way forward. Always has, you're never sure, even when he's defeated, that wasn't his plan in the first place, so that he could trick you and do something else. And this week's episode, like, he completely loses all of that persona to execute their plan. Like the whole, I don't know, like he completely loses his chill, I guess is what I would say. They come in and he's half drunk and they're looking for his ticket and he does the fireworks instead. Like even the plan to turn himself into kind of the kind of the cops that they have on that moon world, to bring her in. Like he completely doesn't have just like his, I'm going to sneak in here and be super chill about it. Like he's super fake and doesn't seem to be comfortable in his own skin at that point. It really felt off to me. It seemed like complete 180 for how the character's been presented to us and everything else we've ever seen him in.
Yeah, again, I would totally agree, and I don't feel I don't feel like that's been presented, at least in my eyes, and maybe some listeners do feel it has been, but I certainly don't feel like they have presented Loki that he would be at that point yet, especially given the fact that he wants to overthrow the timekeepers. And it just, again, he's always seemed like, even when he's defeated, that that was part of the plan, or you're only, you're, because you're supposed to think he's defeated. He always seems too calculating, and again, just like a tonal shift that I don't feel has been explained yet, much like I said in the first episode, that I didn't quite buy. And again, you kind of see a little bit of that, but I didn't quite buy that this version of Loki would just be totally overwhelmed by everything that he saw. Maybe he would. I don't know. I've never seen my life played for me on a screen and then seen the end of it to say how I would feel. But there are some things in this show that I just feel just aren't earned with Loki, and it takes away from some of this episode.
Yeah, he's not the clever trickster that, even, he's not the charming villain. He's kind of a boofer at times in this, and that's not the Loki that we love. That's not the Loki that everybody was so excited was going to get his own show.
100%. So, Rob, anything else that you want to add before we move on to the next segment? I think I've covered my end.
I've covered what I have.
All right. So the next segment here is called From the Lobby. Obviously, it's a TV show, but sticking with the theme of Matt Goes to the Movies, this is where we'll discuss our favorite scene, least favorite scene, and then we also rank this, but also it's where we'll talk about the franchise appeal, which I think we've kind of done a little bit throughout this, and where this stands in terms of the MCU. So, Rob, I'll let you go first. Do you have a least favorite scene, like something that just stuck out as a scene as a whole, where you were like, ugh?
I kind of think the moment when they're getting tossed off the train, that whole bit, there's so much of it that really could have been reworked. Like I said, I don't know. I got the impression they don't really know what to do with Loki as a fighter. It's weird that he just kind of forgets how to be calculating and 4 steps ahead of everybody. That whole bit just, it just really didn't work for me. And on a second watch through, it becomes much more apparent.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't like, and maybe all of this changes depending on what happens with this next episode. And who knows, maybe some of this was part of a plan. I don't know. But when you're taking it at face value, I definitely agree. I don't think that that scene works, and it goes against, like I stated, what I think we've been known Loki to be. So I would agree with you with that. Favorite scene, though, what stood out?
I think my favorite scene is like I had said, when they get to that love is hate, and you get a little bit. They've got some time to kill. They're having the conversation on the train. We get a little more of a window into, at this stage of this Loki's life, what's important to him, what's his mindset, how does he feel, and we get a little bit of some insight into Sylvie, although not much. I would have really liked to have had, in this episode in general, I would have really loved to have a better understanding of what her motivations are and why she's doing the things that she's doing, why she's on this quest, why she's setting this mission up that's taken her years to execute. I don't really feel like I got enough, and I know we're only in the 3rd episode, so we're at the halfway point. And if she's kind of being set up as the primary antagonist potentially of this, I'd like to know a little bit more about that at this. So that's, but there's definitely some parts of that conversation that I really enjoyed. I think having a better understanding, and obviously these characters make an interesting revelation that we've kind of talked about already. That's going to change people's perceptions of them moving forward.
Yeah, I think that scene where they get a little bit, deeper into what does love mean to both of them, and then also, you get that reveal about the TVA. I like that scene just because that felt, when Loki gets that information, that felt like Loki, because you can really start to see, like, if it was a cartoon, there would be a thought bubble with gears turning with Loki's
Yeah.
head about, okay, how do I use this? What does this mean? Because he's thinking, like, just like when he said the variants hiding in apocalypses, like, look at this, like, I figured this out. You can just tell as soon as he gets that information, he's figuring out, okay, well, what does this mean and how can I exploit it to get what I want? So that felt like Loki. Unfortunately, it's kind of too little too late, because there's so much before it that doesn't feel like Loki, but I really like that because it was a return to form. So that would be, my favorite scene. So with that being said, let's talk about franchise appeal. And we've talked about it a little, but Rob, just a little, bit deeper into where this show stands in the MCU, and maybe a little bit of, call it a theory, Harrison.
Don't shoot us.
Right? Yes, you'll have to do this when you join us, for episode 5. But where do you think this is maybe playing? I know this. You mentioned before that this seems like this is definitely what leads into the multiverse of madness, and we thought it was going to be WandaVision. But where does this stack for you? And, anything that we talked about earlier with how they're going to have these shows going forward in terms of how Disney Plus is going to continue to get people interested?
It's logical to think that Sylvie is a character we see in other places. Again, we haven't, since we've had shows on Disney Plus, there has not been a theatrical release for us to really find out more. It is incredibly unlikely that any character we've been first introduced to on Disney Plus will appear in Black Widow. Like, that's just not something we would expect, because that movie was supposed to have come out over a year ago now at this point. So, will we see any of these characters? Will any of these characters have an impact on Doctor Strange 2, or even the third Spider-Man film, which is one of the worst kept secrets, is that there's some very multiversal stories, or even cameos at a bare minimum, that are expected to be in that. I believe we'll see more TVA in the future. Matt, you've got some theories that Kang is somehow involved. Kang is allegedly, is it even confirmed that he's going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania? Has that been confirmed, or is that still just like a poorly kept secret?
No, it is confirmed. I forgot the actor who is playing him, but the actor has been confirmed. The character has been confirmed. So he's 100% a go. They haven't said, though, how big of a role he has in that movie. He seems too important to be the main villain. So maybe a Thanos type overview in that movie of, we only see glimpses, or we figure out why he would be a part of that movie. I don't think he's going to be the overall, like, big bad and they just get rid of him. He just seems too important for that. But yes, he is 100% confirmed.
Yeah, so I think we see Sylvie moving forward. I don't think she gets killed off here. I don't think she gets pruned or anything. I don't think her story ends with this. I think they're purposely trying to give her more to do. That's going to keep her around. I think we'll at some point forget that she's a Loki variant, and I think she'll just get referred to as Enchantress or Sylvie moving forward after the show's done.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think maybe we could potentially, maybe possibly see her in Thor: Love and Thunder. I think there's room for her to maybe, especially if she's no longer considered like a variant. There's certainly been hints that she might be a different character altogether. So I think we could see her in the future. I definitely think the TVA will have something to do with Quantumania, especially if the theories about the TVA. Some of those are true, with the TVA actually being stuck in the quantum realm. Like, that's where they are, especially because the line, well, time works different here. That's literally the same line that Scott Lang says in Endgame, where he says time works different in the quantum realm. So certainly that's a theory that could prove a big part of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I think this show is setting up a lot more than I thought it would for these upcoming slate of films. Obviously, I agree with you on Black Widow that I cannot imagine that we see anything that relates to these movies, or these shows that we have seen. The only one that I think it could maybe relate to is, honestly, I think Black Widow could maybe have something to do with the Legend of the Ten Rings, based on the new trailer that came out that showed the surprise return of a character that I didn't think we'd ever see again. So based on some of the things I'm hearing about Black Widow, I think maybe it could have some ties to that movie.
July can't get here fast enough for the release of that.
Yeah, I like totally forgot it's just going to be really soon. Like, it's out of nowhere that it's coming up. And again, it felt like I mean, at one point it was like, geez, are we ever even going to see that? Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's actually here.
That went by quick, didn't it? Like, it was delayed, COVID delay, COVID delay, COVID delay. Oh crap, by the time Loki's done, like, you and I will be standing in line with our tickets.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. So, super interested to see that. But going to the rankings, Rob, where do you have this out of 5 reels? I can't imagine it's good. Maybe I'll be surprised.
You're not going to be surprised. I said it earlier that this episode isn't bad per se, the way that Batman and Robin is bad, the way that Batman v Superman is bad. It's not even bad the way that Thor the Dark World is bad, but it's just not any good. And I struggle to think of a reason why I'm going to sit down and rewatch this, like, purposely. And I think, to me, that's always like a great guide to whether or not something is really any good. Does it have staying power? To me, it's 1.5. I think this is the lowest ranking I've given to anything that Disney Plus has put out through all of season 2 of Mandalorian and the 3 MCU shows we've had a chance to rank so far. I don't think I've gone this low yet. And it's hard for me to understand why I would give it more than 1.5.
Yeah, that certainly is the lowest that you have given. So I am a little bit surprised that it's that low. But again, mine's really not that higher. It is 1 star higher than what you've ranked it. I would say 2.5. But again, that is the lowest real rating I have given any of the shows that we've done together for the MCU, and on Disney Plus for doing The Mandalorian. If we did season 2 of The Mandalorian, if we went back and talked season 1 of The Mandalorian, there's not an episode there that I would have given this low of a score to. So
no.
It definitely is the lowest that I have thought about for any of these shows on Disney Plus, which is, and again, it's odd because I almost want to defend it, but because it's not terrible. It's just, again, to feel like filler at this point is a little bit inexcusable, and that's exactly what it does. It's just there. We talked about it earlier. I felt nothing when the show ended, and it was just, well, okay, let's go on with my day here. So to have that, especially with Loki, who with Tom Hiddleston, he has such, screen presence, and he's so good as this character, to have this just be the episode that you're like, meh, it's hard not to just say that it's the worst one out of the bunch so far.
It's a waste of resources, and that's the frustrating thing.
Yeah. Great way to cap that conversation. Waste of resources. So that will complete our episode, our unfortunate review of Loki. It's always fun to do these, but it's, I was a little like off put thinking about like, man, I'm just gonna dump on this thing when when we were getting
Right.
ready. Certainly something I didn't anticipate, but before we do sign off, there's some stuff coming up that's really exciting. I know Rob's excited about it. I'm super excited and happy to be a part of it. So, Rob, as much as you want, as little as you want, why don't you talk a little bit about what's coming down the pipeline here?
Yeah. So, Matt's talked a lot about some of the stuff he's got coming up for solo episodes. We know that we've got more Loki coming weekly. You can guarantee that I'll be back for those. Certainly, you can check out some of my thoughts on the Fast and Furious series, and Matt's going to be a guest on every single one for the Basement Binge. I know Matt will plug that in a little bit. Um, as we've been talking about just great films, and when Harrison invited us over to his show, one of the questions he had asked was, "Why do you love movies?" And I've been kind of really thinking about it a lot since he asked me that question, and the longer I thought about it, the more this idea kind of grew from a kernel of an idea into a fully formed like I really want to do this. Really wanted to take a minute to talk about just love of film and the films that have stuck with me for long periods of my life. Certain films that just will stick with you, certain films that it doesn't matter what comes out in the future, it's hard to think of anything that will surpass this in terms of your experience. Certainly, we got a lot of this when we talked Star Wars because, Matt, as we kind of discovered, every generation sort of has their Star Wars, and people are going to develop an irrational emotional attachment to whatever was their Star Wars, and that's how they feel about it. And I kind of feel that way about a lot of different movies that I've encountered throughout my life. So I really wanted a chance to kind of talk about some of those. A lot of the content that's chosen by our program director here at Matt Goes to the Movies, who is Matt. A lot of the content that's chosen is very much in the comic book realm. It's sci-fi. There's horror. That's kind of the primary lane of what gets chosen to get produced here. And I got a couple things that are a little bit outside that are films that have really meant a lot to me and mattered a lot, and I think about a lot. So I invited a special guest to sit down with me to talk about it, and we're going to just go ahead and announce at this time that the Matt Goes to the Movies extended podcast universe. Yes, that's right, the MGTTM EPU for short, which is not actually shorter than saying the whole phrase together, anyways. So Matt Goes to the Movies is getting its own extended podcast universe. It's getting its own variant, if you will, in the spirit of Loki, its own spin-off, its own anthology episodes. And those will be released somewhat soon. I've got one. There was really two films that we kicked around, my guest and I, that we wanted to do right away. We kind of landed on one, and I really like that we started with that. We recorded it the other day. I'm just kind of finishing up the post-production on it, and look for that in the coming week. But yeah, it's definitely a guest that knows me well, let's say. And we had a lot of fun talking about the film that we chose. So definitely keep your eyes on where you subscribe to this show, and certainly keep an eye on how you follow the show on social media for any announcements about what that film is, who the guest is, and when that will be available.
Yeah, I'm super excited when we, shopped this idea, so to speak, and talked about it. I'm super excited to hear this. I always love hearing Rob's thoughts, and I'll be really interested to hear, his guest and just hear some different movies, because some of the things that I know they'll be talking about, I am a fan. but I don't think they're movies that I would talk about in general. So to be able to hear that and post those and extend those to the audience of Matt Goes to the Movies, I'm super excited. I cannot wait for those episodes. They will be posted to the site. They will be announced on social media so that everybody can look at those episodes, hit subscribe, download those episodes, and really hear some great thoughts from Rob because again, I absolutely love hearing what he has to say. So I'll really be looking forward to that. So Rob, excited to bring those episodes to the show.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, and as always, thanks for having me on to do these. These are always something that I always look forward to doing, and again, just kind of talking about love of film, love of entertainment in general. Um, having we've definitely talked about this before on air. Sometimes you've got a lot going on in your life. Having a show to look forward to, like what we've been getting, having new films that are coming out that you're just super excited, and then getting the chance to really break them down. Film and TV and entertainment are just such major parts of people's lives. It's certainly been a major part of my life, and having the opportunity to really break it down and why and go in depth and why it's just so much fun, and that people listen to this I just think is incredible. And there's somebody driving home from work right now or doing the dishes or mowing their lawn or whatever it is that's helping pass that time a little bit too, and I just think that's incredible and that's awesome. And thank you to the listeners for downloading the show. And certainly, real quick plug, make sure you connect with the show. If you're not already subscribing, please do so. If you're not following the show on social media, just search Matt Goes to the Movies on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Matt does not do any dances, but we're still working on it. We're trying to get that going. And email the show, mgttmpodcast@gmail.com. It's just the initials of Matt Goes to the Movies and then podcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you like. Tell us about your favorite movies. Tell us your favorite movie experience ever. Maybe it'll get reviewed someday. Maybe we'll read your email on air. Who knows?
Yeah, Rob, thank you so much. Like Rob said, all of that information, it's always going to be in the show notes, especially Harrison from the Basement Binge. His show will be plugged in this episode. Normally, he is a staple of these MCU shows, but he's enjoying some, not time off, but he's out doing a couple things that are preventing him from being here. We can't wait to have Harrison back, but his show notes will be inside this episode. And like Rob said, interact with the show, social media, Podchaser, leave a review. It really helps us out. It lets us know, what listeners want to see. And there's a lot coming. We've got Rob's episodes coming up. I've certainly been getting episodes out at a much faster rate with everything going on with Loki. Spiral from the Book of Saw just released. Equilibrium, Minority Report has been out. I just did an episode on The Dark Knight, which has really taken off. A lot of interaction with the Dark Knight episode. And the Tom Cruise marathon that I have going that started with Minority Report, goes through Oblivion, The Last Samurai, Top Gun, and then leading up to Top Gun Maverick, which is one of my most anticipated movies of this year. I cannot wait for that. So a lot of stuff coming out. Leave feedback for the show. Let us know what you think. And we look forward to bringing you more episodes. So until next time, thanks for listening.